They all assumed I was fragile, that at 67, I'd be an easy mark. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, certainly did. She smiled at me, sweet and attentive, while secretly plotting to claim the $7 million I had spent decades building. She thought I wouldn't notice, that my age would make me compliant. She was wrong. I've spent a lifetime making careful decisions, rental properties, long-term investments, and patient growth that no one outside my family truly understood. Quiet, steady, and unassuming was my choice of armor. But I had always known that wealth changes people, and suddenly I could see the shift in Sarah's eyes. The polite greetings, the feigned concern, it was all a mask for ambition, and it was slipping. The first time I sensed it, she casually suggested I update the accounts together, a subtle trap. I smiled and nodded, outwardly unaware, inwardly calculating. I knew I couldn't let anyone, not even family, undermine the security I had earned. Every interaction became a careful dance, every suggestion, a test of patience and perception. By the second week, it became clear. Sarah wasn't just curious, she was scheming. Her friends whispered to her, and she tested my boundaries, pressing me to reveal details I would never share. But I had spent years learning to protect not just money, but the trust, respect, and dignity that come with it. I would not be deceived. Not now, not ever. If you're watching this, subscribe and comment where you're from. Let me take you back to how a simple family gathering turned into a high-stakes game of wits. A story not about greed, but about vigilance, strategy, and the quiet power that comes with knowing your worth. My name is Eleanor Whitford, and at 67, most people would say I had lived a quiet, unremarkable life. But the truth is, I had spent decades quietly building a fortune most people only dream of. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't about showing off. It was about security, independence, and control over my own life. Starting with a small inheritance from my late aunt, I invested wisely, bought properties that appreciated steadily, and kept everything carefully documented yet almost invisible. Over the years, I had amassed $7 million, not in gold watches or luxury cars, but in stable investments and rental properties that worked silently for me. Family life had been complicated. My son, Daniel, adored me, but he wasn't always careful with money, and his wife, Sarah, always had a sharper eye for advantage than I anticipated. I had taught Daniel the value of patience, responsibility, and discretion, but Sarah, she had always wanted more, faster, and sometimes without the patience for integrity. I didn't anticipate she would one day try to test the limits of my trust, but her ambition had been simmering for years, subtle and quiet, masked by smiles and courtesy. For decades, I was the quiet observer, the one people underestimated. Neighbors, colleagues, even family assumed I was naive or gentle because I didn't flaunt my wealth. But wealth, as I had learned early on, is as much about perception as it is about numbers. Every decision had to be calculated, every move strategic. And in all those years, I had learned one invaluable lesson. Those who underestimate you are the most dangerous. They can see your kindness as weakness, your patience as simplicity, and your calm as ignorance. I had built an empire not to impress, but to protect myself from exactly that kind of threat. This careful, hidden life was about to collide with reality. A family visit, a casual dinner, a simple suggestion from Sarah, and suddenly the protective walls I had built were tested. She wanted my fortune, not to preserve it, not to invest it, simply to claim it. And just like that, I realized that the lessons I had learned quietly over decades would be put to the ultimate test. Every choice I made now would decide not just my wealth, but my dignity, my independence, and the respect that I had earned through a lifetime of careful, calculated decisions. It all started with a seemingly ordinary afternoon. I had received a letter from the executor of my late uncle's estate, a distant relative I barely knew, yet someone who had quietly admired my discretion and prudence over the years. As I opened it, I discovered that I was the sole beneficiary of his estate, a substantial inheritance of $7 million. At first, it felt surreal. $7 million. It wasn't just a number. It was freedom, security, and validation of the life I had led in quiet diligence. But within hours, the reality hit me. Money changes everything. People I trusted, people I loved, suddenly looked at me differently. My son Daniel congratulated me with genuine warmth, yet there was a hint of envy I couldn't ignore. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, wore a smile that felt far too sharp, eyes calculating, as if this windfall had shifted the balance of power in subtle ways she hadn't anticipated. The dynamics of my family shifted instantly. Casual conversations carried hidden agendas. Friendly advice became probing questions. Even my most trusted relatives began dropping hints about investments, opportunities, and ways to manage this fortune. The world I had carefully constructed around trust, patience, and discretion now seemed fragile, as if one wrong move could undo decades of quiet work. It was in that moment, alone in my study, reviewing the documents, that I realized my inheritance was more than wealth. It was a test not of my financial acumen. I had that in spades, but of my ability to navigate human nature, of my ability to protect my independence while maintaining dignity. And one person in particular was going to push me to the edge, Sarah. I knew from years of subtle observation that she wouldn't just passively accept my control over this fortune. She would try to claim it for herself, and she wouldn't hold back. That letter didn't just bring money into my life. It ignited a challenge, one that would require all my experience, patience, and cunning to ensure that I didn't lose not only my fortune, but also my self-respect, my independence, and the legacy I had quietly built over decades. The very next week, the tension became impossible to ignore. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, began testing boundaries almost immediately. At first, it was subtle, offhand comments about helping me manage my inheritance, suggestions about smart investments she could oversee. I smiled politely, but inside I felt the sharp edge of intrusion. Then came the real pressure. She started questioning my decisions to purchase certain properties and invest in ventures I had researched for years. "Are you sure you understand the risks?" she'd ask, her tone sweet yet laced with doubt. The message was clear. She didn't trust me, or perhaps she hoped to undermine me enough to gain control. Family gatherings became battlegrounds. Cousins who hadn't spoken to me in decades suddenly expressed opinions on my spending habits. Even my son, Daniel, found himself caught between loyalty to me and fear of Sarah's manipulations. Every conversation felt like a negotiation, every compliment shadowed with ulterior motives. My once peaceful life had turned into a chessboard, with each player calculating their next move. I realized quickly that wealth doesn't just bring opportunities, it amplifies human nature. Trust, love, and loyalty all became commodities, weighed and measured against dollars and potential gain. Protecting my fortune now meant protecting my relationships and my sanity. It wasn't just Sarah, though. She had allies, friends who had suddenly offered guidance, advisors who were eager to benefit from the family discord, even distant relatives who smelled opportunity. The challenge was clear. I needed to act decisively, not aggressively. Any misstep could alienate my son, fracture family bonds, or even create legal vulnerabilities. So I began to strategize. Every move had to be calculated. I documented every suggestion, every push for control. I strengthened legal safeguards, reviewed every contract, and reminded myself that my fortune was the product of decades of diligence. No one, not Sarah, not a meddling cousin, not even a well-meaning family friend, would take that away without a fight I was prepared to win. This conflict wasn't just about money. It was about control, respect, and proving that even at 58, a woman could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast those who underestimated her. Every test, every attempt to manipulate, only sharpened my resolve. The game had begun, and I was determined to play it and win on my terms. After weeks of navigating Sarah's subtle manipulations, I realized that reacting with anger or defensiveness wouldn't protect my fortune. It would only escalate tension and risk fracturing family bonds. Instead, I had to evolve. I had to think bigger, act smarter, and find a way to reclaim both my authority and my peace of mind. I began by reassessing my priorities. The $7 million I had worked tirelessly to accumulate wasn't just numbers on paper. It represented decades of discipline, resilience, and careful judgment. Protecting it meant more than guarding assets. It meant understanding people, anticipating intentions, and making decisions rooted in clarity rather than emotion. I invested in knowledge first. I consulted trusted financial advisors outside the family circle, learning about estate planning, trusts, and protective legal structures I had never considered. I studied ways to safeguard my wealth while maintaining family relationships. Knowledge became my armor. Next, I practiced emotional strategy. I learned to listen without reacting, to observe without revealing, and to separate love from leverage. When Sarah spoke about helping or questioned my investments, I responded calmly, letting her statements reveal more than I disclosed. I realized that patience was as powerful as any legal safeguard. Time would expose intentions, and I could use it to my advantage. I also strengthened my relationship with my son, Daniel. Open conversation, shared values, and gentle guidance allowed him to see the situation clearly. He began to understand that loyalty to me and protection of our family's integrity were not mutually exclusive. Together, we created a united front, not through confrontation, but through mutual understanding and strategic alignment. By embracing this new approach, I shifted the balance of power subtly but decisively. Sarah's attempts to control the narrative began to falter. Where she expected impulsive reactions or defensiveness, she found composure and calculation. Her influence waned, not through force, but through the undeniable clarity of purpose and the wisdom I had cultivated over a lifetime. This turning point wasn't just about safeguarding money. It was about mastering influence, nurturing meaningful relationships, and proving to myself that wealth, when combined with insight and patience, could be a tool for empowerment rather than conflict. I had transformed from reactive to strategic, from cautious to confident, and the path ahead, though still filled with challenges, now felt navigable, with every move calculated, every decision intentional. The moment of truth arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Sarah had convened a family meeting, expecting to intimidate, guilt, and coerce her way into my $7 million. I walked into the room not with fear, but with preparation, documents, legal protections, and a calm, unwavering presence. Sarah started with subtle barbs, questioning my judgment and framing herself as the concerned daughter-in-law who only wanted what was fair. She thought she could manipulate the narrative, painting me as unreasonable or secretive. But I had anticipated every angle. I stayed composed, responding with clarity and confidence, letting facts speak louder than emotion. When she tried to argue over the trust and inheritance documents, I presented them calmly, explaining the legal framework that safeguarded my assets. Each clause, each provision was deliberate, designed to protect both the family's integrity and my lifelong savings. Sarah's expression shifted from smug assurance to disbelief as she realized her attempts were futile. But the real turning point came when I addressed the underlying issue, the manipulation of relationships and trust. I spoke directly to my son Daniel, reminding him of the values we shared: honesty, respect, and loyalty. I explained the importance of understanding intentions rather than succumbing to pressure. In doing so, I empowered him to see Sarah's motives clearly, without me dictating his feelings or actions. Sarah tried one last tactic, appealing to emotion, suggesting family cohesion, and painting me as the villain. I paused, choosing words carefully. I reminded everyone that protecting what I had worked for did not make me selfish. It made me responsible. Wealth is meaningless if it comes at the cost of integrity and clear judgment. By the end of the meeting, Sarah's attempts had crumbled. The documents, the foresight, and the calm strategy one had employed left no room for manipulation. She realized she could not override decades of careful planning and trust one had earned for my son and other family members. Daniel stood beside me, confident in his understanding and supportive of the decisions we had made together. In that room, I felt a profound sense of empowerment. This was not just about money. It was about asserting control, protecting relationships, and demonstrating that wisdom, preparation, and patience could overcome even the most persistent attempts at deceit. I walked out with not only my assets intact, but with the clarity that family, when nurtured with honesty and strategy, could withstand tests of ambition, greed, and manipulation. This was the culmination of everything I had learned, a victory born not from confrontation alone, but from foresight, composure, and the courage to stand firm. After the confrontation with Sarah, the house finally settled into an uneasy calm. The tension that had been simmering for weeks dissipated, leaving behind a mixture of relief, reflection, and cautious optimism. My son Daniel, once uncertain and torn between loyalty to his wife and respect for me, now stood firmly by my side. The clarity of the events had revealed not only Sarah's true intentions, but also the strength of the bond we shared, a bond built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. Sarah, meanwhile, retreated from her attempts, her ambitions for the inheritance quietly abandoned. She still lingered in family gatherings, polite but distant, a reminder of what could have been. Her presence no longer carried the tension or threat that had haunted our home. It was a testament to the effectiveness of preparation, strategy, and calm authority. In the days following, I took time to reflect on the experience. It was easy to focus on the money, the inheritance, and the legal protections that had safeguarded my assets. But the real lesson lay deeper. Wealth without wisdom or trust can be fragile, but wisdom combined with patience and foresight creates resilience. I realized that the true value of my $7 million wasn't just in the financial security it provided, but in the lessons it had reinforced about human behavior, relationships, and the importance of clarity. Family dynamics slowly returned to a healthier rhythm. Daniel and I developed an even stronger understanding, communicating openly about expectations, boundaries, and shared values. We celebrated milestones, supported each other's choices, and enjoyed the kind of honest connection that had been obscured by deception. I also noticed a shift in extended family interactions. Respect replaced subtle competition, and genuine concern began to outweigh curiosity or envy. The ordeal had been taxing emotionally and mentally, but it had also been empowering. I had navigated manipulation, preserved my assets, and reinforced my role as both a mother and a guardian of our family's legacy. It was a reminder that strength is often quiet, patience is powerful, and foresight can protect far more than just money. Looking back, I understood that the confrontation with Sarah wasn't merely a conflict over inheritance. It was a proving ground for wisdom, composure, and integrity. Emerging from it intact, I felt an unprecedented sense of accomplishment, not because I had defended my wealth, but because I had preserved the harmony and trust within my family. In that, the fallout wasn't just relief, it was the foundation for stronger relationships and the knowledge that I could face challenges with confidence, grace, and strategy. With the threat of Sarah's claim behind me, life returned to a rhythm that felt both familiar and renewed. The $7 million that had sparked tension and doubt became a symbol not just of security, but of the wisdom and foresight I had employed to protect it. I now viewed my wealth through a lens of responsibility, clarity, and intentionality, not as a measure of power, but as a tool to shape meaningful choices and strengthen relationships. Daniel and I embraced a deeper understanding of each other. Our bond, once tested by external pressures, had emerged stronger. We communicated openly, discussing not only financial matters, but also our shared vision for the family's future. Trust, once fragile under the strain of manipulation, became the foundation for every decision. We planned together, celebrated milestones together, and approached challenges with a shared sense of purpose and resilience. Family gatherings, once charged with subtle tension and cautious interactions, shifted to a space of respect and genuine connection. Extended family members, witnessing the calm authority and clear boundaries I had set, began to treat one another with greater honesty and consideration. The dynamics that had been fractured by greed and curiosity were gradually mended through consistency, communication, and example. Beyond family, I found a renewed sense of personal fulfillment. The ordeal had reaffirmed my confidence in my judgment and ability to navigate complexity. I engaged more deliberately with my passions, charitable interests, and community involvement. Wealth, I realized, was most valuable when it facilitated growth, learning, and positive impact, not when it became the source of conflict or mistrust. Reflecting on the journey, I understood that the true resolution was not merely financial security, but a restoration of balance, trust, and perspective. The confrontation with Sarah had tested patience, strategy, and emotional intelligence, and emerging from it unscathed was a victory in its own right. I had defended my assets, preserved family harmony, and, most importantly, affirmed the values that mattered most: honesty, clarity, and integrity. As I looked toward the future, I felt a quiet confidence that no external challenge could unsettle. The lessons learned from this experience, vigilance in protecting what matters, discernment in evaluating intentions, and the power of measured action, would guide me for years to come. The $7 million was more than money. It was a testament to wisdom, patience, and the enduring strength of family bonds. And in that understanding, I found not just resolution, but peace, purpose, and the assurance that I could navigate life's complexities with grace and confidence.